how does the U.S. justify 25% tariffs and penalties on Indian imports linked to India's energy trade with Russia amid claims of financing Russia?
Good evening, Hal, and thank you
Good
for
evening.
having me with you.
Always a pleasure.
Actually, as you mentioned in the early beginning, the harmful sanctions over Russia, which is reached actually almost 29,000. Can you imagine sanctions over Russia? Different packages of sanctions. Within that, Russia started to adapt with that sanctions or having ways to overcome such sanctions. One of those ways is to open and to enhance the Asian markets for energy. Because you know that Russia depends mainly on the European market for oil and gas, Russian oil and gas, as well as European also, where it depend on Russian oil and gas dramatically. So when that market was closed, according to the sanction, Russia started to open and to enhance cooperation with the Asian partners, mainly India and China.
Yes.
China now is the biggest exporter to Russian energy in general. That mean gas, oil, as well as electricity. Plus India, and India played very important role in the Russian oil trade. It means that it has oil from Russia with a little bit discount, because you know Russia offered discounts for its oil to be able to sell it at around $66 per barrel. So and it sell it in the international market with the international price. So it actually it gains a lot. And that helped India and the Indian economy to jump from sixth to the fifth largest economy worldwide. So I think it was a good business for both Russia and India. And because of that, it may be understand why Trump administration and President Trump focusing more and more on India. Not only because it facilitates selling the oil Russian, but because it gains a lot actually from that trade, because some or many actually of the American companies buying the Russian oil through India. That's why he wants to control that and to benefit, the United States benefit from that also.
Of course. Professor Nurhan, now, how does the United States respond to India highlighting its own imports of critical materials from Russia? What impact does this have on the credibility of U.S. trade restrictions?
Actually, any restrictions traditionally and historically, United States, the one who was pushing forward toward free trade, and the one who established the WTO, by the way. And pushing forward the whole globe to join the WTO and to lead free trade organization for opening all markets in front of the American productions. But when China actually started to dominate in that field and became the first trader in the whole world, the United States, and particularly Trump, because he's a businessman, he is usually think economically and judge economically the whole thing. So he started to put restrictions to protect from his own point of view, to protect the American economy, the imbalance in the American trade. Not only with China, with India, with many other partners, to put more and more restrictions, not only upon competitors like China, but even with friends, because use the word friend to to India and partners like Europeans. So actually, that harm I think it harmed the whole economy. It will change the rules that govern the world economy for decades, since 40s up to the date. So we are now in a process of a new world order in which countries start to have restrictions over trading and over importers to protect itself and to allow flourish of their own industries.
Definitely. Professor Nurhan, how does the U.S. evaluate Europe's continued importation of Russian oil and gas despite multiple sanctions and their pledges to support Ukraine?
It is simply because that historical connection and dependence of European on Russia, and because still the Russian gas and oil is cheaper than the American one, because you know that the American one is LNG, which carried by ships and needs some certain process to be used. But the Russian one, it is going through pipelines from Russia directly to Europe, so it's still more safe, cheaper, and it is, you know, the fluence of it is guaranteed than the American one. American one, because that shipping, etc., it is more expensive. And as I mentioned, it needs some process and the stations to be used. European is not up to the date. They don't
have
such
the infrastructure for such a
exactly
process.
the infrastructure. Yes. It's exactly for LNG, and that's why they still depend logically on the Russian gas.
And what challenges might arise from imposing tariffs on countries heavily dependent on Russian energy, such as China and India, and how might the U.S. addresses those challenges?
I think it's very difficult to imagine that China and India will give up the Russian energy and the cooperation in that field, because actually the Russian energy helped a lot the two countries to push forward more and more the development and industrialization for the last few years. And plus, I think US, by the Russian energy or not, they will impose some tariffs and restrictions over China and India. India became a challenge right now because Mr. Modi has his own project to India. He has his own dream for India to have great India, one of the great powers, not only regionally but internationally as well. And that's why the development in India is going that much fast. And India at least mentioned clearly that it will not stop cooperation with Russia in that field, and it has a full independence to cooperate with whatever partners. So I think, and of course, China also, without a statement or so, the cooperation is going very well, actually. So I think both countries, their interest more and more with Russia, their doubts and fears toward Trump and United States is growing, and they are trying to have some compensation through mutual and multilateral cooperation within Asia and within Global South in general.
How are inflation, high interest rates, and a looming debt crisis influencing Russia's financial stability amid the ongoing conflict? Do you think that it has any effect on Russia? Russia is already selling its gas. Do you think that it has an effect on Russia, and if so, to what extent?
Of course, it is harmful. We should be honest. Yes, Russia affected. Yes, of course,
but not to the extent of being in the red line.
This is the main point. To what extent and whether the Russian people feel it that much or not. Actually, the shock of sanctions was received by the macro economy. I mean, by the government, whatever, to reduce the effect on people. That's why the Russian people, yes, they feel it, but not that much, okay? But on macroeconomy, or the Russian economy as a whole, yes, sure affected. But here we have three main points we should mention. First, that the Russian strategy to counter such restrictions, tariffs, etc., I think were very successful. And the harmful was at minimum than expected from United States and European, because they expect total the destruction and total dissolution of and collapse of the Russian economy, collapse for the Russian currency, which actually didn't happen. But there is some consequences. Russia, with its own strategy, with its own partners, because many of the partners, China, India, Turkey, by the way, played very important role of Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, all those helped to relax and calm a lot of the sanctions consequences. Second, and most important, look to the whole world. You will find that problems everywhere, even in the United States. Why Trump is doing what he is doing? Because he is reading the situation and the status of the American economy. American economy is also suffering. Inflation, by the way, in the United States raised in some points 40%. All what we was that before, like $1 piece of pizza, $1 T-shirt, etc. All that disappeared from the American market. The debt also, the American debt, now it reached 36 trillion. Can you imagine? It's a huge amount. So everywhere, a German economy, Eurozone economy in general, it retreated. Can you imagine that? According to the World Bank, the growth rate in Eurozone less than 1%. If you compare that with Russia, last year was the first European country in growth rate. It is 3.6, according to IMF and World Bank. So yes, it was harmful for the Russian government, but still manageable. Third, the gains Russia have from the military operation. From Russian view, the gains, yes, it was sacrificing a lot of people. Yes, it was yeah, it was very costly, humanitarian and maybe financially also. But the gains are very important. From their point of view, they had a sea, they had land, and protect Russians and their people. So the gains Russia had maybe compensate to what was lost during the operation.
Okay.